Thank you, Nancy, for remembering to record for me. At the end of today's session, we're going to spend some time doing what we're calling a scope of practice activity. So a theme we've heard a lot from faculty is this challenge to figure out exactly what the boundaries are in terms of how much do we need to do. And so we want to spend some time today thinking about, as students come in, what is on the student? What is our role as faculty and instructors? Who else on campus plays a role in student success? And to start to think about, again, what are the boundaries for us as faculty? We're going to spend some time thinking about that collectively as a group, but you'll also have some time at the end to think sort of personally about, are there particular areas where you have struggled to set boundaries over the years, and what might you want to set as those boundaries this year that you can take with you into the fall semester and hopefully put them in a very prominent location so that when you need them, they're there. Sound like a plan? Mm-hmm. Excellent. So a little bit about academic context. So our entering class would have started or would have had the end of 8th grade disrupted with COVID. They started high school, maybe virtually, hybrid, certainly socially distanced. Many of them had limited co-curricular opportunities. And so for many of our students, right, that transition to high school is one of the major transitions that prepares them to be ready for the transition to college. And theirs was not normal. And so again, their abilities to perhaps manage some of the emotions and some of the logistics involved with the transition to college may be different than what we've seen before. If you look at absentee rates, I know this has been something we've talked a lot about in chemistry and I've heard from other folks. If you look at absenteeism, the percent of US students who are chronically absent, which they define as missing 10% or more of school days, is up nearly double post-pandemic to what it was pre-pandemic. So 26 to 28% of students are considered chronically absent nationally, nearly double from what it was a few years ago. Now, as we know, if you're not here, if you're not actively participating in your education, you're not going to be successful. But again, for many of our students, they have been successful missing a significant amount of class. And so their mindset around attendance and what it means to be an active college student is going to be quite different. And so again, as we think about the fall, I wouldn't be surprised if we continue to see some issues with social interaction. Again, that sort of jumping into a totally new social context. They haven't had a lot of practice at that potentially. Again, we might see some issues with managing stressors, and I suspect we're going to continue to see some issues with increased absences. If we look at academic preparedness, most of the data currently available is coming from K-8. The testing, is anybody here from education? A couple folks. So you guys feel free to jump in when and if I misstate things. So there's going to be some national assessment at the at grade 12 this year, but most of the data we have right now is kind of coming from K-8. Pandemic recovery, and most of this is looking specifically at math and reading, is a mixed bag. It depends highly on socioeconomic status. So the wealthier your household, the more likely you are that you have fully recovered or are on track to recover from the pandemic. Depends strongly on race and ethnicity. So again, our students from marginalized ethnic and racial backgrounds are lagging. We're seeing sort of what they call a K-shaped recovery, where the gap is actually widening between our white students and our students of color. And it also depends strongly on performance pre-COVID. So students who were at grade level before COVID, again, their recovery is going okay. Those who were not, again, we're seeing those gaps continue to rise. The estimate that I saw was that the average student, again, this is K-8, still needs the equivalent of 4.8 months of schooling to catch up in reading and 4.4 months in math. Okay, so there is still significant learning gaps at the K-8 level. In terms of what we know for high school, so only 14% of 13-year-olds report reading for fun almost every day. That's down nearly 50% from 2012. So again, not only do we have some reading losses in math, our students are reading less. So if we are in reading heavy disciplines, again, this idea that we can say, hey, go read chapter 12 for tomorrow, our students might need a little bit more coaching and it might need a little bit more support for that. Our entering class of 2024 probably had their algebra learning impacted. So again, they would have been that, most students are taking algebra sort of 8th grade freshman year. They probably had that impacted. I have not seen any good data on exactly what the impact is. I will say that the data that I have seen is that math preparedness has not rebounded, and that actually the high school graduating class of 2027 is where they predict the dip in math to be. That's the class that seems to be hit hardest. So I suspect that if we saw lagging math skills last year, this year will be as bad, if not worse, and will probably continue to be bad for a few years. And in 2023, ACT scores, and I know there's a whole lot of problems with standardized tests, I want to preface that, but they are the lowest they've been in 30 years. Part of the reason that I share that is that there's not been a significant change in high school GPA in a very long time. And so there has been concern about what do we use as an overall metric of how students are doing. If GPA isn't changing, what do we use? And so again, if we look at ACT score, it's down quite a bit. ACT actually did a survey of the incoming class of 2024. Again, unsurprisingly, 86% of students report that they're prepared to do great. They're going to get B's or better in college. If you remember a few years ago, we asked a similar question on the entering student survey, and 97%, I think, of our incoming students were also confident they would get B's or better. However, again, if you look at the ACT college benchmarks, many of our students are not ready. So again, nationally, only 74% are meeting benchmarks for college readiness in English, only 48% for math, 63% for reading, and 54% for science. Okay. So again, I share this not as doom and gloom. Those of you who know me know that I am by nature a glasses half empty person. So I always feel like I'm like, let's talk about all the ways that life sucks. I share this with you because, again, there are things that we can do for our students, right? If we know what we are facing in the classroom, there are things that we can do. And so I don't want to sugarcoat where we're at. Again, I think our students are going to come to us with some pretty significant challenges still and for a while. But I do think that there are some things that we can do in order to help support them. So again, as we think about the fall, more than ever, and again, if you have spent any amount of time with me, you know that I'm always harping on these things, but now more than ever, we need to think about what assumptions we are making about what our students can and cannot do, and really asking ourselves whether or not that is still an assumption we can make. We need to make our expectations clear, because again, what they think they need to do to be successful and what we think they need to do to be successful are probably not the same, okay? And I would couple that with, we need to hold them accountable for meeting them early. So again, what I don't want anyone to assume is that I am in any way suggesting that we water down content or we lower standards. That is not the answer, right? But if we can make our expectations clear, if we can provide support, if we can hold them accountable early so that the students who aren't meeting expectations can be referred to resources, I think that we have a good shot of being able to support students. Again, assessing our students' level of preparation. Like in chemistry, we started doing on math. I keep wanting to say math placement, but that's not right because that's a whole separate thing. But we have a math skills exam that we've been giving out as a way to get some measure on kind of math skills for students and where they're struggling. And Amanda and I have been working on that data, and there's been a change over the last few semesters. And so we'll share some of that out with our department. But again, anything you can do to assess your students' level of preparation and what they might need help with is going to be important. And again, one thing I want to make very clear, and Lori will make clear, and Brett will chime in at any time, it is not our job as instructors to fix all of our students' problems. We cannot do that. But there are support services that we can refer to. So the more that we can refer and the more information we can share with those support services so they understand what our students need, the more likely we are as a campus to be able to support them.
Can I add something?
Absolutely.
So I'm a glass half full person, and I actually have to go to a thing with the system president, so I'm going to keep my glass half full hat on. But I will say that despite the things that we're seeing in the national trend data, if students are able to achieve a 2.5 GPA here, they are successful. So success over and over again at our institution is generally at a 2.5 or higher. So as students make it here and figure out how to assess help, it's what they do so that they believe that they can do it, if they know that they belong here, if they know that they can get support. Those three things tend to make a huge difference, because a 4.0 student can crash and burn because they don't show up, they don't do the work, they don't put in the effort. And you all know this, I'm not telling you if you don't know, but longitudinally across our data, what you see is true, is that if they show up and do the work, they're successful. And it only takes a 2.5. So if a student's getting a C+ in your class, they're gonna graduate, they're gonna be okay here. So anyway, I have to leave for another meeting, but thank you all for being here, and thanks to Erin and Lori for leading the show. So
Thanks for that, Gretel.
yep.
Erin, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Do you have a PowerPoint that you're showing?
I sure do.
Could you share your screen?
Why do you have to ask hard questions, Nancy? So, those of you who are not new to CITL events know that none of what you are seeing right now is at all surprising. This is normally how CITL events go. If you are new to CITL events, I'm very sorry. I was joking with James and Erica earlier, except now I don't know how to make. People don't want to see my ugly desktop. I was joking with James and Erica earlier this week. I saw a t-shirt popped up on my Instagram feed and it was like, wildly prepared, unprepared for the day ahead. And I was like, I feel like that should be my uniform for the whole academic year. So for those of you who are online who did not get to see my slides, they will be coming out to you after the presentation. So I will be sending all of these out along with some of the resources to everyone afterwards. So if you have not yet put your name on the sign-up sheet, please do so that I can make sure I get those to you. So my apologies to our Zoom land. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lori.
So I'm Lori, I'm Director of Student Retention. Some of you may know me from when I worked in the TLC, and now I'm happy to be working as Director of Student Retention. So Erin gave us this beautiful overview nationally of what we know about our students. I want to tell you a little bit about what we know about our students coming in specifically to UWSP. So you may know that my office sends out an entering student survey. We've done that every year since 2022. The results I will share with you today are from the Stevens Point campus only. So these are students who had matriculated to the Stevens Point campus in May. I did send out a separate survey to the Wausau and Marshfield campuses. So if you also teach on the branch campuses, you will hear a little more information about those students later. Their survey is closing in September. We wanted to send it closer to their orientation date. This survey went out to 1,980 students. We had 560 responses, so about a 28% response rate. Of those students who responded, 40% are first-generation college students, 60% are continuing generation, which is almost exactly the same ratio that we have currently with each incoming class. It tends to be split about 40-60. Just in case you don't know, I think everyone probably does, but just to quickly reiterate, the way UWSP defines a first-generation college student is a student from a household in which neither parent nor guardian received a 4-year post-secondary degree. So student may come from a household where both parents went to technical college, have a 2-year associate degree, they still qualify as first-gen here at UWSP. That definition does differ a little bit from institution to institution, so I wanted to make sure you knew what our definition was here. Why first-gen status matters. I've linked a couple of articles here that you're welcome to read whenever you have a chance, because these slides will be going out to you. But basically, I think, as we all know, first-gen students tend to be the ones who struggle more to stay. Not only are they dealing oftentimes with more serious financial issues, heavier workloads, family or community obligations than their continuing generation peers, but also they typically lack or have lower levels of the social and cultural capital that is needed to navigate the relationships and the attitudes. It's not necessarily even about the knowledge they bring in, the actual school book knowledge, as much as it is about the, what am I supposed to call my professor? Can I call you Lori? I mean, I've had students write, dear Dr. Professor, Mrs. Teacher Lori Randall, because they just wanted to get it right. So there are all sorts of factors that go into the social and cultural capital that may be limited for students who are the first in their families to go to college. So I've linked those articles there if you want to read them once these slides come out. And I want to say a little bit about first-gen status on our campus. And I also will note, Erin mentioned the K-shaped recovery for students of color versus white students. when you look at first gen status and kind of cross-reference it with race here on our incoming students, only 36% of white students are first gen and 68% of our students of color are first gen. So we do see a pretty big gap there. And if you look at entering student survey results, when we ask students, what are you worried about? What are you feeling confident about? There was a difference of at least 5 percentage points in all of these areas between the first gen students and the continuing gen students. So the first gen students, more worried about meeting their financial obligations, which oftentimes means I'm working 2 jobs. We had a fair number of students on the survey say, yeah, I'm going to work both on and off campus. And of course, off campus, they're not going to have any limits on how much they can work. On campus, we're pretty good about, you can't schedule more than 20 hours. Off campus, all bets are off. First gen students are more worried about knowing which courses to take, more worried about their study skills. Are their study skills what they need to be? Are they going to be able to develop good study skills? They're worried about knowing where to find help. So I've asked the good folks in the TLC to put together some nice big posters. Here's knowing where to find help, knowing when to ask for help. Not just with academic issues, but also with, I'm struggling with my physical health, I'm struggling with my mental health. Just knowing when should I ask for help with that. Knowing where to find help with mental and physical health issues, and affording necessities like food, utilities, and transportation. So these are some areas where first gen students come in feeling more nervous, less prepared than other folks. And then when we look at their confidence, again, a difference of at least 5 percentage points between first gen and continuing gen and how confident they're feeling. This first one, you may kind of smile and think, oh, it's not a big deal, but it actually is. Students are worried. The first gen students are much more worried than the continuing gen students about understanding things like, when can I withdraw from a class? When can I drop a class? All these sorts of things that can kind of haunt them on their transcript for a long time. So first gen students are more worried about that than continuing gen. They're worried about finding information about co-curriculars, social events, career events, all the kinds of things that help them feel like I'm fitting in and I have a purpose for being here. Again, they were worried about having good study habits, and they're worried about developing good study habits. They're worried about recognizing I'm not getting this, I need to ask for help. They're worried about being able to set goals for course performance and have that mindset that, yes, I can get there, I can set these goals, I can achieve these goals, both academic, professional goals. First gen students are more worried about developing and applying the critical thinking skills needed to solve problems. And this one is fascinating to me because when you look at the overall student results for all the students who submitted the survey, the number one thing that all students were most confident about was their critical thinking skills. They thought, yep, gonna be fine with that. But the first gen students, not quite so fine as everybody else. So, we'll see how that goes. They're confident, it's good. And then the first gen students are more worried than others about managing their money and having a plan for financing their college education. And the last thing I wanted to present to you, when we think about academic preparedness, a lot of us tend to think in terms of, well, how rigorous was their high school education? And one way we can kind of get at that question is, did students take some sort of advanced academic programming, like an AP course or honors courses? First gen students are quite a bit less likely than their continuing gen peers to have taken such courses. 78% of continuing gens took such courses, and only 62% of first gen students took those courses. And then when you look at first generation students of color, and I will note that I am using the term students of color rather than underrepresented minority. Does anybody know the difference? There's a really subtle difference that I only recently learned. So underrepresented minority refers specifically to students who identify as African American or Black, Native American, Latino, or Southeast Asian. Other students from different groups, say, for example, students from India, are not considered to be underrepresented minority students, but they are still considered to be students of color typically. And some of it depends on how the student identifies. Because of difficulties in teasing out who was identifying as what race or ethnicity on the entering student survey, I decided to use the term students of color to kind of cast a broader umbrella. So when we look at first gen students of color, only 44% of students in that group participated in advanced academic programming in high school. So that percentage comes down quite a bit. And you're probably wondering, why did I save this point for last? It's because I wanted to go back to Erin's point about assumptions. We probably assume, I assume, I'm guilty of this. I probably assume, okay, if students did some kind of advanced academic programming in high school, they're probably feeling more confident. They're probably more prepared. I don't have any data to indicate whether or not they actually are more prepared. This is something that I want to start tracking this year. If a student has said, I took AP honors classes in high school, I want to start tracking. Are they getting higher GPAs? Are they actually doing better? The assumption is yes, they are. I can't actually answer that question for sure. But I do have the data to tell us, are they feeling more prepared? Are they feeling more confident? And the answer is maybe not. So what assumptions? Because I assumed, okay, you took honors classes in high school, you're probably feeling more confident than other folks, but not necessarily. So if you look here, these are 4 key areas: knowing what professors expect from me academically, levels of concern between the students who took AP honors and those who did not, close to the same, levels of confidence, not hugely different. We've got a pretty big difference here in terms of first gen and honors students feeling like I can handle the rigor of my courses. But that's really the only place where we're seeing a very large difference. We've got some difference here as well. But it's surprising. There's not consistently, yes, the students who took AP or honors courses are always feeling more confident or less worried, or no, they're not. So there's a lot of wiggle room in there, which to me serves as a good reminder. Those assumptions we make can cut both ways, because maybe we're assuming our honors students, they're fine. I don't need to support them as much, but maybe they need just as much support. So that idea of finding out, assessing what your students bring with them and what they need and how we need to support that. I feel like this is just a really good reminder to us that it's very difficult to group students into, yep, they're going to be fine. No, they're not. So find out as much as we can and refer. So, all right. Any questions while I'm up here? And sorry, I couldn't really see this group over the trying to. Okay, yeah, question.
Just really curious whether or not you think that the folks that answered that survey are a representative sample.
I think they are fairly representative because we got a broad range of answers. We got a lot of students who were saying, nope, not worried about this, also not confident in this. So, but then we also got some students who were saying very worried, very confident. So I feel like we were getting from both ends of the spectrum of how students are feeling. So I would say reasonably representative.
I'm just wondering a little bit about, the demographics of students who would choose not to answer that survey.
Well, I thought that too. I'm like, so maybe what we know is these are the students who are better at answering surveys. But yeah, I think we got a fairly broad spectrum. And I'm curious to see how the responses on this campus compare with the responses on the branch campuses, because I think that will give us a little bit of an idea of representativeness. But it's a great question. And it's something, this is my first year sending out the survey. I kind of want to track and see if we can get a handle on that.
Lori, I don't remember if you should, but 30% of the
It was-
enterings.
Yeah, it was
class took it,
28%.
Which
Yeah.
my qualitative data friends tell me is a very good response rate.
Yeah.
I know nothing about surveys, but they assure me that that's a decent response rate.
So, and we actually had what Qualtrics says is a 50% response rate, but some of that was students who filled in their name and their email address. So they didn't really get counted. So of the students who actually completed the survey, we had 28%. So yeah, and I think qualitative research will typically say, if you can get 10%, you should be happy with that. So, but it's a great question. All right, anything else? Okay, I'm gonna sit.
So what I wanted to do is provide you an opportunity to talk in your groups or think by yourself, however you process best. But again, to think about what are some of the assumptions that we are making, again, about our students. Now, again, this could be about prior knowledge. So again, are we assuming our students know how to do X, Y, or Z? Again, one I hear a lot lately is we assume our students know how to use the Office suite of tools.
They don't.
They don't, because they come from a Google school, right? So again, what are the things in your I said discipline, but it could be more broad than that. But what are the kinds of things that, again, we're just sort of taking for granted that our students know how to do that maybe is not, maybe we need to think about. And then again, is there anything that jumped out about the data I shared or the data that Lori shared that again makes you think that maybe something needs to change or adjust in your courses? So take some time to think about that, please. There's so much fruit. Go eat fruit. It's good for you, I promise. Have snacks, have coffee, have drinks, use the restroom, take some time to talk. If you did not bring paper and pencils with you, there's some writing utensils and sticky notes. We'll use the sticky notes after break. But please discuss in your groups or think by yourself and just sort of ask yourself, what does this mean for me and my students this fall?
Also, if you didn't get the sign up sheet, it's over here, and that way, if you have your name, and your email address there, you'll make sure you get all the slides.
Lori and I wanted to spend some time talking about some of the work that's been done across campus. So again, this is not necessarily stuff that Siddle has done or Lori has done, but some things across campus that you might want to be aware of that have either happened or will be happening soon. To address some of the concerns that we've heard from faculty over the last few years. So. And we've heard a lot about student behaviors, particularly things like attendance and the fact that students just aren't coming to class anymore. So a couple things, and Lori, feel free to jump in at any point. So some of you may know, because I see a lot of friendly call spaces in here, but if you don't know, the Office of Student Retention and the Navigate team is going to be partnering with the College of Letters and Science to do a week 3 pilot. So the College of Letters and Science faculty teach, and I forget the percent, but it's a ridiculous percent of our.
I think it's about
students.
90%.
Yeah, like 90% of our first year students are in a calls course. And so they did a call for volunteers. Gretel said yesterday, I think there's 50 faculty who volunteers to be a part of this pilot. So courses, intro chem, intro bio, composition, those kinds of courses. But they will be going in at week 3 to indicate students who are attending or non-attending. There's some nuance to that language. So it's not just going to be, are they attending or not? I do not have that nuanced language in front of me, so I apologize. But there'll be a few options. And then there's going to be outreach through the resident halls. So residence life and retention staff will be actually, door knocking students to be like, hey, you're being reported as non-attending, what's going on? And then Lori will be looking at patterns using that 3rd week, that 5th week. So again, if you teach one of those high DFW rate 100 level courses, you also are asked to do week 5 reports. Everybody does that 8-week attendance report. So they'll be looking at trends in that 3-week, 5-week, and 8-week attendance data to try to see if they can figure out other particular student groups who seem to be missing more. Again, are these door knock opportunities, improving attendance, those sorts of things. Siddle has worked on creating some email scripts for faculty, and they'll send these out. So I know a lot of us want to do outreach to our students, but it's exhausting to constantly have to draft and send emails to our students. So Lori and I have worked together to put together email scripts for a handful of situations, not like worried about attendance, and they've missed some early assignments. And then there was one on.
Worried about attendance may not pass the course, I think.
Yeah, and then there's another one, like the student came in to talk to you and did a life dump on you and you want to follow up with campus resources. And I don't know about you, I cannot keep track of campus resources. So the email script has a, for mental health, click here. For basic needs, click here, right? So you can copy and paste, you can take the bits you want, you can customize the bits you want, and hopefully it will make it easier for you to do that outreach to students, and you don't actually have to keep track of where all these resources live on campus. So when I follow up with you all after this meeting, please note, I've got a middle schooler I've got to go take to PJ's orientation, so it'll probably be tomorrow. You will all get a copy of those email scripts.
And are you storing those on the Siddle website too?
They will be.
Okay.
Our website's in transition.
Well,
shall
and
we
at
say.
some point-
but they will be eventually,
At
yes.
some point, we can put them in Navigate so that all you have to do is log into Navigate and you can see, oh, here's the message I want to send. But that's
Yeah,
it's like steering a very large ship, so.
we are working on that, so. And then Lori, did you want to speak just a little bit about the Navigate alerts and the closing the loop stuff that your office has been working on?
Sure. So if you have has anybody ever issued an alert through Navigate? Okay, and good, quite a few people. Yay, thank you. If you've ever done that, you may have noticed that sometimes you don't often hear what happened. Maybe you're a little bit, yes, and we're aware that this is a problem because I've been in your shoes and I've issued alerts and what happened to this student? So we are working on making sure you get some sort of case closure within 2 weeks. And that'll just be a little message like we contacted the students connected with the TLC, you know, whatever. It sometimes, unfortunately, it may be we weren't able to contact the student, but at least you will know what's happening. So we're doing our very best to make sure that comes out to you within 2 weeks because we really appreciate your taking the time to do that and we don't want it just to go into the void. So thank you.
Can I just start in something about, that I learned last semester about alerts in Navigate? If an instructor puts in an alert and says advisor or other support, if the advisor is a faculty advisor, so it's not a first year student with an academic advisor, the faculty member doesn't get any kind of notification.
This
You
is
have to go into Navigate on purpose to look for things.
good to know.
So some of those black holes are, nobody ever saw it.
Would that go to Sally?
Is that what?
So that advisor or other
Well-
support, I'm just wondering if in that case, did Sally Kayan get, like, did some human get an alert or did it truly
See, I'm
go
not
black?
sure. That's what I'm gonna check with Greg because it is set up so that Sally is a person on that alert. But if there is a faculty advisor, maybe it is just going into a black hole. So I'm gonna ask with our Navigate administrator.
Right, yeah, I learned this by going in to a student I was worried about who was in my class and also my advising. And oh, look, some of my colleagues put in alerts for the student and I did not know that. Until.
Like they can
months
put
later.
in alerts to advisor.
Right,
If you don't
but
regularly
you
use
only can
Navigate.
see that if you're in Navigate.
It doesn't go to your Outlook.
You don't get any kind of.
If you don't have enough
notification
automatically
or-
every day, right?
It's really good to know. We'll check into this and see because, yeah, they need.
I mean, I assume academic advisors are in Navigate regularly. too.
I also wanted to ask, I saw that you could report attendance in Navigate off of that email that came out over the mod earlier this
Yeah.
week. I figured out how to do that, but at what point does that start to flag student retention and basically
So-
alert them if there's a problem?
The biggest value of that is that academic coaches and advisors can see
Okay.
who's going to class. And we've been working for quite some time to try to get Navigate and Canvas to talk so that if
That
you're
would be
taking
lovely.
attendance in Canvas, it just transitions over because it really is very helpful for advisors and academic coaches to see, but we realize it's an extra step for faculty.
Okay,
So
I didn't know if it was like, it would like, if there was an automated system where it would flag.
it won't
students
automatically
95,
flag, but it is,
It's
I
in your
used to
record.
use it when I was an academic coach and I could see, oh, well, no wonder there's a little challenge here. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's a help for folks who are working with the students, but there is no automatic flag. right
Okay,
now.
just more.
And my understanding from Sean is that the EAB, like it's hung up in the approval process system. Like it's not like we could do it right now, but we're not for some reason, like
Right.
there are some hurdles we need to clear, but they are
Yeah, 'cause
active.
I think there's some sort of plugin that needs to be approved or something. Yeah.
Mental health. So some of you may have already heard this. I hope some of you have already heard this, but UWSP was chosen as one of the Universities of Wisconsin schools to pilot Mantra whole campus care. So last year we had Mantra mental health resources, which was like telehealth, telepsychiatry, and I think 24/7 crisis. They have expanded that. The program will now include self-care resources, wellness coaching, peer communities, 24/7 support, and therapy. Okay. The CITL syllabus template has been updated with all of that information. Okay. Or you can just email me and ask me to throw it in an email to you, and I gladly will. So that is going to be a great resource. And then Sally Scoville in the back is working with CITL. She's one of our faculty fellows. She is working on creating a mental health course for faculty and instructors to help, again, close some of these loops related to, it feels like there's 1,000 things happening across campus and nobody knows about them. So Sally is working on a really great course that will just help to kind of level the playing field in terms of our understanding of mental health and what it is and why it's important, what's happening across campus, what resources are available, how we take care of ourselves. Have I done an okay job summarizing, Sally?
Yeah, the other thing was, that in the burnout survey, if any of you did the wellness survey last year, we got a lot of really good feedback from both of those. But people said, part of the problem is we don't know how to care for students with all these mental health problems. So there's a module about how do you, identify mental health and what are some language that you can approach. Then I did a lot of research to some on best practices. So some of them is, you want to restructure your course or add some language, so there'll be sample syllabus language you can copy and paste, sample course policies, should you choose to do it. some best practices that they've researched, that some ways to structure classes so that people aren't missing important parts of your class. Where can you accommodate and where you can't? So there's a variety of resources in there. And then a lot of the stuff they've already talked about, mantra, we've talked to a lot of community partners. Counseling is going to put some scenarios in there. How would you approach this so that, and it's all going to be voluntary, but hopefully there'll be some ways that you can participate in some online training through this if you choose to, and then also get other resources that you can get. So we're hoping to have it finished by the end of this semester, roll it out during the teaching conference in January. So Erin, and then of course now Nancy has been helping me a lot with this, putting it now into Canvas, now that research and trying just to get all the information in there and not make it boring.
Again, AI continues to, oh, sorry, Beth.
Just real quick, because this came up in our faculty meeting today, is the student resource click tab on the side of Canvas, every Canvas course that takes you to the website. We had probably 100% of our faculty didn't know about that.
Okay.
So when you click on that, I mean, students can click on that, but even just pointing to it during, as course introductions, because that takes them to the website that has the counseling site, that has the TL. And again, we had a lot of very long time faculty members and we're all like, oh, this is so cool. I'm like, it's probably been here for a while, but
For the record, it's only been there since January.
okay, good.
So
Well, that
that's
makes
like-
me feel a little better because I was like, this is what we want.
I can say it because he's not here. I'm doing my best to convince Sean to just add a direct link to the Counseling Center webpage as well. So the link that Beth is talking about goes to the UWSP student support resources webpage that has everything from IT to mental health to TLC. I mean, it's got everything. Troy Seppelt from Dean of Students had reached out and asked if we could do one specifically for mental health. So like all of you, this is a very busy week for CITL. So I'm hoping that we will be able to do that as well. And when we do, we will try to communicate it out the best we can. Again, please feel free, anything that we talk about today, please share with your colleagues. Again, we try to do mods, we email department chairs, but as you all know, communication is a challenge, so. AI, apparently we're gonna be a hub for AI. I don't know if anybody else was at the chancellor's thing. News to me, all right. We're doing a book club on the book Teaching with AI. And there will be a set of system-wide events with author Jose Bowen in October. So we'll have those announced. We'll do mods and we'll get those in the CITL newsletter. One of them is going to be on teaching with AI. One will be specific on prompt generation with AI. Nancy Shefferly, I will put on the spot because she spent all summer creating resources for AI. Again, I had hoped they would all be on the website already, but they're not. But she's created some really great decision guides. So if you're trying to think through what your AI course policy should be, you're thinking through how might I integrate AI in my teaching, she's got some really great resources coming out for that. She's also worked really hard on academic integrity resources. So a few of you who were at the academic affairs meeting yesterday heard me say this. Please remember that your students are going to have 5 different instructors with 5 different AI policies. Okay. The likelihood that they make an honest to God mistake is high, right? And how we talk with them about AI, how we talk about academic integrity matters. This campus has always taken, and UW system has always taken, a very punitive stance on it, right? Most people, myself included, we only talk about it when someone has engaged in academic misconduct, and then it's here's all the bad things that are going to happen, okay? There's a lot of great research out there that shows that if we take a more proactive stance, if we talk to students about the importance of acting with integrity, of acting with honesty, you can actually head off a lot of academic misconduct before it happens. And then again, it changes the tenor of the conversation when they do engage in it. We've tried to work with the Dean of Students. They've made some updates to their student-facing resources to try to echo that. Again, we are restricted to UW system policy, so there's some things we just can't change. But we're trying to get resources out there to help faculty navigate these conversations and also navigate the AI policies. Again, what we have found, and I'm not at all surprised by this because I do it too, when we engage in conversations with the Dean of Students about academic integrity related to AI, they're like, well, we don't get many reports. It can't be that big of an issue. It's a huge issue, but people don't report it because the reporting system is onerous, right? So we're sort of in this vicious cycle of we see more academic integrity, it takes a lot of time and effort to report, so we don't report it. But because we don't report it, we can't get the data to show that there's a problem, right? So, and again, I do it as well. We are urging folks to please, if you are able and you have the bandwidth to actually follow the process, please do, so that we can make sure folks are aware of this. Nancy this morning did a workshop on AI redesign, assignment redesign. We may do some more, and then we're gonna have some sort of brown bag. What are you worried about? What do you want to talk about, sort of things to help folks navigate challenges with AI this year? Yes, sir.
So if people want to sign up, can people sign up for the book club?
Nancy, can people sign up for the book club?
The book club will happen in November, and to my knowledge, the sign up will be available until October when it comes out in the newsletter.
So October we can sign up.
Thanks.
And if there's demand, we can do multiple book clubs. All right.
Just a little comment on the lack of reporting of academic misconduct. By policy, we only are supposed to report if we've determined there's academic misconduct. With AI, there might be, I really suspect, but I can't prove it. So I shouldn't report by policy, and so that also skews any data where, oh, they're not reporting it.
Yeah.
It's not just the burden of reporting it, which yes is why.
Yeah.
That's just.
And Nancy, as you've talked with Dean of Students, because I know we've had this conversation with them, right? Because, and again, I could spend the next hour talking about AI and all the problems, but you know, AI detectors are not reliable, so you can't use that as proof, right? And
Correct.
so I know we have tried to engage with Dean of Students to ask what might constitute proof. Have we gotten an answer from them?
No,
No? Okay. We will
no.
keep on that.
Although I would urge people, since you're supposed to have a conversation with the student to investigate the suspected academic misconduct, you should definitely, kind of quiz them on their general knowledge of whatever it is that you think they have committed academic misconduct, because I think that would be the best evidence. When I spoke to them about this, they were unable to answer basic questions, indicating that this is most likely not their work.
The other great elephant in the room, we have an election in November, everyone. There is, I've talked to a number of faculty across this campus. I've talked to my colleagues across the state. There is a lot of concern about how this election is going to go, what that means for colleagues who teach controversial topics, what in the world is going to happen post-election, regardless of which way the election goes. So once again, Nancy put together a series of teaching tips. They should be launching right at the start of term on the election. So it ranges from everything from, if you do want to bring the election into your classroom, and if you do, bless your heart, how might you do that in a thoughtful way, all the way to post-election and their civil unrest. What are you gonna do? We have worked with Rob Bansky, who is the chief of staff and the legislative liaison. Again, these conversations are happening across system. We're also working in conjunction with the Chancellor's Commission on Civil Discourse and Free Speech, something along those lines, to create an academic freedom and free speech resource guide for faculty that will provide information about academic freedom and free speech. How are they similar? How are they different? What are your protections as a faculty member? If you have a student do X, Y, or Z, who do you call? Those sorts of things. So again, it's meant to hopefully be a practical guide. We'll have some downloadable classroom resources because I know for me personally, I know what I should do in the moment, but my brain does not remember in the moment because it's too busy. Flight, fright, freeze, one of those. So we have some downloadable one-page things that you'll be able to print, put in your binder, take with you to class on dealing with hot moments in the classroom. And also with, again, what do you do if there's sort of a escalation of behavior, shall we say. And again, we want to do some brown bags to have a safe space for faculty and instructors to come and just sort of share what's going on in their classroom and what they're seeing. So again, we will announce those probably in October. So before we move on, questions about any of those or big topics that you're like, what about this?
Can I just ask real quick, Donna, you're on the Chancellor's Commission. Are they doing anything about civil discourse on the election? You were gonna raise it to them. I don't know if you've. if that's come up
Yeah,
yet.
I think we are not addressing the election directly as a topic.
Okay.
But we are certainly working around the perimeters of that. Like John Blakeman is going to be giving stuff about free speech. And I think we're gonna have like a Congress to campus program and stuff coming out. So, yeah.
So look for those events, because there's also things you could tell students. If you're interested in talking about this, maybe Chemistry 105 isn't the place, but here is the place.
Oh, interesting you should say that. So one of the email script is not ready, but we also will have an email script for, again, if you have a student who is being inappropriate in your classroom and you want to follow up with them and either try to lay out consequences or help them to identify more appropriate routes for their enthusiasm, we will try to create some resources around that as well that we can share with faculty. Yeah.
I think it was Pointers Vote Coalition. I think Jennifer Collins runs that, had put together a Canvas module with just like voting resources for students if they wanted to learn how to like register or where to go to vote, like what's their polling place, that kind of stuff. Candidates guides as well. I'm not sure where that lives, but that's out there if people want to incorporate that on their Canvas page.
Yeah, I do also just want to share, so several years ago, UW System did a free speech survey. As part of that, all campuses are required to provide some education to students around free speech and civil discourse. Again, I don't remember, and maybe Donna, you remember more than I do. I don't remember exactly what that is going to look like, but all new students coming to campus should be getting some amount of information about this topic.
Yep.
Generally.
There will be after convocation. There will be a short video. I previewed it. It's about 4 minutes or something, just talking in general terms about the importance of civil dialogue. And then I think there's a Canvas module that goes along with that, where students will need to take some kind of a assessment, partly for reporting purposes.
Other questions?
After.
Okay. So with the remaining time, what I wanted to do was what's referred to as a scope of practice activity. So for my friends from the School of Health Science and Wellness, again, correct me when I misspeak, but the idea of a scope of practice comes from healthcare fields, and it's meant to help people identify what procedures, actions, or processes an individual is permitted or expected to perform. So again, what can a dental hygienist do versus a dentist do, right? And the aim is really to protect the needs of both the practitioner and the patient, right? And so there's an educational developer named Karen Costa who, during COVID, she was asked to do a lot of talk on like trauma-informed pedagogy and faculty burnout and all of these things. And she adapted this to education. And she said that creating a scope of practice helped her to figure out what belonged to me inside the walls, whether brick or virtual, of the classrooms that I shared with my students. And that her scope of practice speaks to spaces where I felt the need for clearer boundaries, as well as common frustrations, concerns, and missteps that I've witnessed in the field. And so something that we've heard over and over and over again over the last few years, and I know I've personally felt this, is again, where are the boundaries? Like, where am I done with my student? And so what we wanted to do is facilitate some opportunity to have some of those discussions today. So again, my hope for this activity is to help you to think intentionally about your role at UWSP. And also to provide hopefully a framework for having broader conversations about roles and responsibilities as they relate to teaching and learning. So maybe that's with your colleagues over a beer, maybe that's part of a department meeting, maybe you go back to your assistant dean and say, hey, we need to talk about this. Again, I want to be very clear. This is not a ploy to try to get you to take on more. It is also not a ploy to get people to say, that's just not my problem, right? It is really about trying to clarify what roles and responsibilities are. Now, before we begin, those of you who were at the academic affairs meeting yesterday, Gretel has said this, and I want to be very crystal clear. While I greatly appreciated some of the examples that the chancellor provided at the State of the University address, I felt that they were examples of going well above and beyond what we should expect for an average faculty member. So the official stance from University College is that we hope that faculty will support students by recognizing behavior or conversations where a student is indicating that they need support. that they respond. So again, that you listen actively, you empathize with them, and you normalize whatever they're feeling, right? So you're struggling with chemistry, lots of students do. You can still be a chemistry major. And that you refer and report, okay? It is not your job to solve every student's problems, full stop. And that is the message throughout University College, okay? I want to be super clear about that today. This is part of a full guide, and Lori's got a couple hard copies.
Yep.
Again, I will share the link to the full guide. But the full resource actually has, again, links to if I have concerns about housing, where do I go? And there's a hyperlink you click to that, again, you can copy and paste and send to a student, okay? So it's meant to be a resource guide to, again, help you make those referrals if you want to do that outreach to the student, right? Again, if you decide that you're gonna refer to Navigate, totally fine. But if you do want to make outreach and offer resources directly to students, we want to make sure that you have the tools to be able to do that
And
successfully.
if you're like me, you like to have a paper copy on your bulletin board. Obviously, the hyperlinks are not clickable, but I will leave the paper copies here. If anybody wants one, you are more than welcome to pick one up. So it's a nice reminder. I don't have to solve all this stuff.
Is this like the red folder project? Is it the same?
It's similar. It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
It is one pager and it is, I think, broader than the red folder is.
We're also using this recognize, respond, refer, and the mental health training piece about roles of instructors. So again, continuing to try to use the same and similar language for all of you. So when you, if you choose to use that one, when it's ready, you'll see the same language surrounding mental health.
So step one, at your tables, there are a couple varieties of sticky notes and some Sharpies. What I want you to do is to, at your table, spend a few minutes discussing what are the things students need to do to be successful in college. Okay, so these could be things like they need to go to class. They need to ask for help, right? What are the behaviors that you think they need to engage in? And if you want, you're welcome to put them on your table, or I can wheel over the whiteboards if you would like to be fancy and put sticky notes on whiteboards.
You know,
Good. What I want you to think about next is, based on your role, and I feel like this needs a little bit of explanation. So again, for each of those things that you identified, in what ways are you responsible for providing support? Now, again, that could be, again, I say that students need to come to class. I'm not gonna go to the dorm and get my student to come to class, right? It's their job to show up to class. However, I might argue it is my job, if they're not coming to class, to issue a Navigate alert, right? So this could be, is there something in the classroom that you can do to support development of that thing that, again, you're qualified for and you think is reasonable? Or do you feel like there's a reporting obligation, right? If you notice they're not doing the thing, is there something I should do? Okay, again, super important. It is 100% okay to be like, this is not my job. That is fine, okay? Not everything is ours to fix, okay? So I'd like you folks to talk at your tables for each of those things you identified, have a conversation about, based on my role, what things could I or should I be doing to either help support the student to do this or to report something if I see something amiss. In the last couple minutes, again, to add it into the mix. Who else on campus is responsible for some of these things? So again, as we've thought about what does the student need to do, but again, as we think about making referrals, for example,
So everyone, I
Right.
think,
who else
everyone.
might play a role?
Right.
Now, I get that resource we showed you has some of the answers to this. Part of what we want to get at is, again, what the level of awareness is on some of these things. So again, you may be like, I have no flipping idea. And again, that's totally fine. Part of what we want to get a sense for is, again, where is the level of awareness at right now? Again, the resource that I'll send out later, I think probably has answers for a lot of these, and may be helpful. But again, like, I don't know how many folks know TLC does Tech Essentials tutoring. So when your student is like, I don't know how to use Outlook, you send them to the TLC for Tech Essentials tutoring, right? There are support resources available, but again, communication on campus is an issue. So trying to identify where do we need more knowledge, where do we need more information out there is something we're trying to hopefully get at. So we only have a few more minutes. So take a couple of these last few minutes, to think about some of these questions. Again, add some things to your sticky notes if you just wanna, I see some groups just kind of, tacking them together, 1, 2, 3, that would be super helpful. And again, what I want to do is kind of collate these responses, and again, I'll share them out with everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend this afternoon with us. Please go eat some fruit, even if you don't want it. Stuff your pockets. Take it home. I'm gonna be in so much trouble for buying too much fruit. You have no idea. I hope you all have a wonderful start of the semester. Do not hesitate to reach out to Siddle if you need anything.